Well, hey everybody. My name is Jared Malott, and I'm here with my good friend Mateo Calise. This is the Coltist, episode 38, and we're going to call this one the Dominic Rhodes episode. Interestingly, Mateo, you pointed out Dominic Rhodes actually wore number 38 for the Colts. He played for us for 1 year, had what'd you say, 500 yards?
Nah, yeah, he played like 7 seasons for the Colts, but wore number 33. Then he went like just 1 year to Oakland. What
Mhm.
back then it was Oakland, the Raiders.
Yeah.
And he returned, and once he returned, he wore number 38. So other than that, the only other player we had, that perhaps that wore number 38 is DJ Carey, the most recent one.
Okay.
Otherwise, what is it like? Sergio Brown was the guy you were talking about, the war number
hmm
38 this year. I honestly had no idea he was on the roster. So, yeah, Dominic Rhodes seems like the easy choice.
It seems like other than the obvious Sergio Brown or the Dominic Rhodes, the what kind of would stick out to me about a number 38, that seems like a practice squad number anyway.
Yeah,
It's not like a highly desirable number. Interestingly, Dominic Rhodes out of Midwestern State from Cooper, Texas. I always like to point that out. Not a Power Five school.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, we're here to sort of commiserate, I suppose, on the Colts Thursday night game, which now feels like an eternity to go.
yeah,
If I'm being honest with you, uh, the absolute most horrible thing that could have happened, right? Is a bad team won a game they probably should not have won.
yeah,
And if we're gonna speak candidly, it's pretty fair to call the Colts like middling at best.
yeah.
Um,
At
and,
best, yeah,
and I sat here in the preseason and then before this game and said that, look, man, going into Mile High Stadium is a hell of a uphill battle, and the Colts also are not very good. And it's a troubling mixture when you're not very good and you're also in a hostile environment
yeah.
that's
On
like
the
also
road, yeah,
hostile to your person, right? Like being up in
yeah,
that elevation means you run out of air, you start huffing and puffing sooner. And so that game was a slog, and so it certainly felt like both quarterbacks were struggling to breathe. If I may, both quarterbacks sacked a total of 10 times. And I think that's why that game was low scoring. Is these teams turned up the pressure uh, in both coverage and in their pass rush, and
yeah,
affected both quarterbacks greatly. And I think if I had to call this in hindsight, as much as I've poo-pooed a lot of what the Colts are doing, you sort of have to at some point embrace it. Um, the Colts and Broncos struggled mightily, and I want to attribute that to defense.
yeah,
Both teams limited each other in the run. They both held opponent quarterbacks under like a 70 overall rating, means both
yeah.
defenses played well.
No
Um,
touchdowns,
no touchdowns allowed
no
thrown.
touchdowns
Both
scored at
quarterbacks
all.
had multiple picks, so both quarterbacks turned the ball over. It's gonna keep the score down, kids. I didn't know. A lot of people were messaging me like, "Oh man, the Colts, couldn't score. If they were handed the football on the one, largely, yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah,
But here
yeah.
it echoes the importance of the kicker.
Yeah.
If not,
Hey,
if nothing else, um, we won this
yeah.
game. Much of we have as we've been successful here this year because of defense and special teams. Certainly not because the offense has done
Nah, not at
anything.
all. It's
I want to
yeah,
make
it's
sure
actually
though that I put my foot on the throat of the argument that this has anything to do with Matt Ryan, because it does not. This is almost entirely the offensive line, although there are instances on film where it's clear that we aren't all on the same page.
yeah,
And I'd argue that when you have a new guy at left tackle, um, and I believe your right guard was new too,
yeah.
which
Braden Smith played. Yeah,
right
Braden
tackle
Smith, who
last year, and
plays
he
at right
moved it.
tackle,
Yeah,
played. Yeah, he played at right guard.
yeah.
Then you have Matt Pryor sliding into the right, and your rookie left tackle in Bernard Raymond and Ryan Kelly. He just played like I believe it was on like 25% of snaps before going down with a hip injury. So you have
They
an
said it was
offensive
a
line
hip
where like,
injury.
yeah, or like what is it like? Four of your stars are playing like a position they did not play there the week ago.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
that's
just a
usually
seize key.
another
I mean,
recipe. Yeah,
we've harped on it. You know, every podcast I've ever been on, I've talked about it. The teams that win are the teams that are consistent. And right now, the Colts are just not that. They don't consistently have a run game. They aren't consistent in the passing game. Um, the sort of rules I have, you've got to have your leading receivers be receivers. And for the Colts, I feel like their most potent threats are tight ends and running backs, and that's no bueno. And I get it. You got Pittman and Pierce is coming into his own. I
yeah,
don't think that's how Matt Ryan's seen this at all. I felt like he's on an island. He's got 1, 2 reads, and then he's either going down or probably trying to throw risky football. It's an unfortunate spot to be in that I think 10 days off can get you a long way because you have enough film. You have to, and this is sort of like a bare minimum. You have to have
yeah,
enough film to know you needed to make a move. Colts made a roster move today. Colts
yeah.
picked
They
up an
signed
who they sign.
Ty. I mean, his last name is almost impossible to pronounce. It's Ty Neshke. I don't know. Let me check that how to pronounce his name, but it's
Yeah.
journeyman tackle can play like it's Pro Football Reference. Luckily, they
Oh,
put the
it looks like Siki. If I had
yeah
to pronounce it, it's
Siki. Yeah, yeah.
Nsekhe.
It's
Looks like Siki.
and Siki. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Ty
Siki.
Siki. Okay, so
Ty.
they
Yeah,
signed somebody who's like a journeyman tackle. Started for a couple years. Didn't get re-signed last year after Dallas's tackle got injured. Um,
yeah.
so
Veteran. He's like 37, I
37
believe.
years old.
37. Yeah.
Okay.
36. He turns 37 October 27th. So yeah,
This
basically a
feels
37
like
year
an
old tackle.
exercise in futility. Um, the this, I was thinking about this conversation before this podcast about talking about the offensive line and them picking up this journeyman tackle today feels an awful lot like commenting on the quality of music the band is playing as the Titanic sinks, right? Um, the reality here is right, like you're adding a guy that at best is gonna spot fill in that can't be expected to start and play an
Nah, yeah.
entire game. Um, I think you're I would be upset if I was Matt Ryan if Pryor gets to continue to play. I'll just come out and
Nah,
say
yeah,
it.
there is just, yeah,
Um,
no way. Especially if there's
he
such a
looks like a
performance.
large
Yeah,
person to me. He doesn't when I see him in a football pads, I'm like, he's just like a large guy. He doesn't like scare me. He's not menacing. He doesn't seem like he's protecting anybody. And then when you watch him play, he gets like hit and he does this thing where he's like shocked that that someone of his size got like jolted by somebody. And I get it. It was Denver's pass rush, and that's kind of what they're going to be known for on their defense anyway for the next few years with Bradley Chubb and company. But yeah, obviously, uh, to me, I don't like to reward bad personnel management,
yeah,
game, bad scheme. Um, and so for the Colts to have gotten this win, it's like a gift. Um, although you think this game exemplified why it's important to have a good kicker. And then if you just look at the games the Colts like lost, and it's like, oh, they had opportunities that they missed. Hey, it feels like, when you look back, you'll say, hey, winning that home game against Kansas City and then following it up 2 weeks later by beating Denver in an overtime game in which there were no touchdowns scored. Those are
yeah,
two marquee wins. They just doesn't feel very fucking marquee right now. You know what I mean? It
yeah.
feels
No,
kind of like
definitely.
dirty. Those
Yeah,
are
it
kind of they
seems like
rewarded.
they need, seems like they need that sort of like convincing win where everything
Yeah,
just clicks. Like, say for example, they go up next Sunday, they beat the Jacks at home by double digits, and the
right.
offense puts up at least more than 24 points. The defense holds opponents under, say, 20 points.
Yeah,
Well, along the lines of like a 31-14 win, where you're like, okay, now we are 3-2-1,
Yeah.
perhaps leading the division. We're waiting for the Titans, but that's when I would be ready to say like, okay, we are in a good position. If we lose this one, we drop to like no wins against divisional opponents. Like we allow the Jacks to take like massive step forward in the division. Tennessee most likely wins. So you're like, okay, a loss here basically doesn't seal the fate of your season, but it's gonna get ugly because
Yeah.
your two wins, like you said, they are just two lucky wins. Like one against the Chiefs, where you got lucky that their starting kicker was injured, their backup kicker missed some kicks.
Yeah.
Chris Jones got the stupid flag that allowed the game to keep going when it should have ended like right there.
Right.
Game kept going. You managed to come out with a win. Then you go up against the Broncos, and Russell Wilson throws that stupid interception when he could have essentially put the game away.
Right.
Because if the Broncos, they kick a field goal there, they go up by 6. Colts are not scoring a touchdown, so it's basically game over.
Yep.
But Russell Wilson throws a pick, and then they travel all the way down the field, 4th and 1, and they call like the stupidest play call I have seen, perhaps like in such a critical time,
Yeah.
where you call like a play. You just need 1 yard.
Right.
That's all you need. You get that yard. You get 4 chances to reach the end zone. So why, just the play call, and also PJ Hamler was like wide open on the slant and Wilson missed him.
Yeah.
So you just got like, yeah, like you said, two, in my opinion, lucky wins where you
Yeah.
just probably did not deserve to win.
Yeah.
So yeah, we
It's almost
are.
like they got rewarded for attendance, right?
Yeah,
Like they certainly didn't get rewarded for outstanding game planning and execution and personnel management. Like they won a war of attrition. And fortunately, I think, and that's what was kind of nauseating about watching football this weekend is because we didn't have a game. I told my wife it's going to be a lot easier to watch like every down of a football game because I'm not emotionally invested in this at all. And so I watched
yeah,
football all Sunday, and then of course watched the game last night. And you realize, first of all, I hate saying it out loud, but it's right. Tom Brady's right. There's a lot of bad football being played.
yeah,
Um, and,
yeah,
and the
most
Colts and
definitely,
the
yes,
Colts are part of that. And of course, I think that what maybe I'm not getting, we're not getting, the public's not getting is there has to be a sense of sort of weathering the storm, and sort of it's a week to week league and we got to see whose
yeah,
availability is the best ability. It'd be nice to get Shaq back. It'd be nice to get yada yada. It'd be nice to be healthy here. A functional offensive line would be fantastic. Um, and that's something that I think 10 days off in the middle of your season can fix.
yeah. They
Something
could
like
do that.
it's
Yeah,
like a mini bye week for you. They'll be the healthiest they've been. They're going against a division opponent at home. It's the fucking Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, come the fuck on. And I'm sorry to curse, and I waited well over
yeah,
five
but
minutes, so the Google and YouTube algorithm should not haunt me here. But the reality is, like, it's these penny ass division opponents that haven't won shit in over a decade that for some reason Frank Reich, who you want to root for him, like he steadied the ship, and
yeah,
even though their generational quarterback retired at 30, like in his prime, and you are going to struggle to replace that talent level. Again, I want to point out, like, I'm not saying this is Matt Ryan's fault at all. It's just unfortunate that the offensive line has not played well and Jonathan Taylor's
yeah.
hurt. It's
Not
like
play at all.
compounding issues. And it's like, um, I looked this up and I wanted to ask you this question, and I'm loaded, so I already know my answer. But I wanted to ask you, outside of QBR or any affiliated metric, like a summary metric, what metric do you look at for a quarterback that tells you whether you got the guy?
The one I like the most is one I discussed a lot with Troy Russell, the
Mhm.
analytics guy. The one I looked at the most is expected points added per dropback.
Okay.
That's basically the one I use. Like it's the one where I try and use, the number coupled with what your eye is telling you. So if you look at a quarterback and then you go like, okay, this guy is good, and he has like he's in the upper echelon of good EPA per dropback. So you're like, okay, this checks out. So that's the one where I found like, okay, these are the guys like, in my opinion, are playing like the best at quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
and the rankings, they check out. So that's the one I go for with the most. And Matt Ryan is actually like, I believe it's like 26th out of 31, qualified quarterbacks with more than 200 passing attempts or 150 passing attempts. So it's like, yeah, he's not been good.
Okay. EPA.
Yeah.
I look at completion percentage, and I understand it's a trap. So I know that they're not every good quarterback that has a high completion percentage is a guy you want at the helm. But I want to point this out, and it's mostly a haha more than it is anything else. Matt Ryan is 10th in the NFL at like 63.8%, almost 64% of his passes. Keep in mind, Peyton Manning, 64.5% for his career.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz is 20th. That's about 62.3%. And that's the difference, my friends, between 2-2-1 and 1-4.
Yeah.
So while a lot of people are sitting here, a lot of people are, they can only find happiness if their team goes undefeated in the regular season. Um, have expressed their frustration with Matt Ryan. Um, it's very hard to play this position, this quarterback position, and it's even harder to do so when you had like
Yeah.
a
When your
really
offensive line.
we had a really good offensive line last year, and I'd argue that was kind of why you came here, is because you felt like this place is going to protect their quarterback, and maybe
Yeah. And it
they
doesn't
were
go that way at all.
now it just looks like they should have gone with Raymond from day one and bit the bullet. And if you just build your game plan around, hey, if we're not getting this ball out real quick, this rookie's going to let some pressure. You can game plan around this. That's what just frustrates the hell out of me, is because like when I coached my little bit in semi-pro, I knew my kid got no time. And so that we have to game plan it. If we're gonna throw this rock, it's coming out
Yeah.
quick, or we got to move the pocket ourselves, right? So think about, that's not how you do that in the NFL, Jared. No shit. So think about that. If I am coaching like some bush league football and we watch film and we go, man, we have 3 seconds to throw this ball. If we're not handing it off, we have to get rid of it fast. We have to get out of the pocket. The Colts are entering that territory where their quarterback is
Yeah.
being hit so frequently that your game plan almost has to switch to a full-blown spread. We have to spread them the fuck out. We have to take over whoever is poorly aligned. We have to attack, and we have to take angles, and we can no longer line up in a bad formation and try to run out of it,
Yeah.
because teams are going to highlight the fact that we want to run this ball downhill. So there's no more running out of the spread. I posted that on Twitter today after watching a bunch of football this weekend. I've decided, until a team shows you otherwise, your offensive line's not good enough to run the
Yeah.
football out of the spread. Um, and I think the Colts are a team that needs to commit that if you're going to run the football, you've got to do it with tight ends on the field. And
Yeah.
then and the reason I say that, it's like I get to say it for two separate reasons, both which are valid. One, you need the meat, you need the people, you need them to block, but they're also your best pass catching weapons. So it's like, hey, you get your tight ends more involved, you run the ball more effectively, you have a more powerful pass game. Um, I think at this point, if I'm the Colts, I really only want to see, and again, I'm sort of torn on how I ultimately feel about Paris Campbell, but you want to see Pittman and you want to see Pierce, and then you've got these tight
Yeah.
ends that you really want to use. I think that I would start, and I think that's probably what you'll see the Colts do. And I think one of the things that I'm sort of getting cold on Nyheim Hines. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah. And that
seeing
concussion. Yeah.
I'm not seeing the touches, the quality of work after he catches the ball or touches the ball. And I feel like the hit, obviously the concussion's terrible, fucking horrible. I hope he comes
Yeah.
back fully healthy and shit. But also, and I'm talking like before that, I feel like his oomph is kind of missing his like
Yeah,
second
it's just
gear. And he and Kenny Moore kind of strike me as the sort of fire starter on your offense and defense. In that if they're playing well, it's like, oh, we're winning and we also have Naheem Hines, right? Um, but I haven't felt that this year. So
yeah, no,
this 10 days, obviously, I imagine he goes through concussion protocol, comes out the other side of that. But again, I have this feeling watching him play, the same as I felt before, where they're just trying to stay healthy, right?
yeah,
And that it's a war. And again, I know what I'm saying is not what they're saying at the Colts facility, that this is a war of attrition and there are going to be injuries. But here's the thing. When you watch these other teams play, they are losing marquee players for the year on a regular
yeah,
basis.
it has,
That's going to
yeah,
have a big impact on their season. And I don't feel like that's what's happening here with the Colts. And it's like a relief for me because I woke up on Sunday and told my wife, there's no way you can ruin this day. The Colts don't have a game. So I
yeah,
just get to watch all this football, and then all day long, it's like, oh wow, that was important. That was an important player, and he's out for the year. Randy Gregory, right? You know what I mean? Like there was a lot
yeah,
of
yeah, several guys
lots of
that went
injuries.
down with injuries.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying is like there was a ton of injuries, and you're like, wow, the Colts aren't in a bad way like that. And I get it. They've got some guys dinged up. So your Jonathan Taylor's, your Quiddy Pays. And I get that. But it's not to the same degree that other
yeah, it's
teams.
not like to the point where you're like, okay, their season is basically done.
Exactly. I still think that
It just,
you can right this ship. You can game plan better. You have a lot more tape. You haven't. I think you have enough to convict prior of like allowing violence
yeah,
on your quarterback. And enough that it'd be hard for me to let him in the facility
yeah,
after I replace him somehow. Um, and yeah, that's gonna stick out to me for a while. Is like something like let 9 pressures in a game or something like that.
yeah, it was
Um,
9, yeah.
I just it's like he lost the edge and need to turn in his
The
wings. You know what I mean?
perhaps
You know what I mean?
yeah, the only thing that I can imagine that might have been an issue is perhaps like switching over to the left side and then back again to the right side. Like that couldn't possibly have been like a good transition to do so. But I expected like some struggles of him, making the
Sure.
transition and such. I did not expect him to be like that bad. Whereas at one point it was like he was getting beat every single play, like
Yeah.
off the edge on stunts to the inside. They were just attacking him and getting him and getting away with it all day long.
Yeah.
Like 9 pressures. That's just it's, it can happen to you. Like I get it. You can have a bad game. It can happen. But it's not like he was playing really good football and he had a bad game, which of course, can happen. Perhaps,
Right.
the short week and with the altitude and all that, you have a bad game. But he was also terrible like all season long. He has not
Right.
been good. It's not like he was having a great season, a solid season, and he had like just one bad game where you're like, okay, cut him some slack. It has been a bad season for him, and this, Thursday night game just, I believe, in my opinion, was like the final nail in the coffin for Matt Pryor's time as a starter. Like there is just no way on earth that he should be starting on Sunday. Like I don't need Dennis Kelly or Ty and Ishki. Like
Yeah.
those guys have a much better case to be the starter because it seems like Rayman is going to be the guy moving forward at left tackle, the
Yeah.
rookie. So or perhaps Braden Smith goes back to tackle and you slide in Will Price. That seems like all seem like better options than continue with Matt Pryor there. So yeah, just don't see him starting this Sunday.
So the it's like the upside is the downside. The upside is there's probably going to be another new starting offensive line for the Colts. And that's
Yeah,
also downside, right? Because like we started off the podcast saying like consistency is the most important thing. And that's what we lack is that like every game you got to start somebody somewhere else because somebody royally fucked up the game
yeah,
prior and you can't trust them at that spot no more. So you got to figure out a configuration that works. here I see ESPN's got the Jags winning 61% of the time, and the Colts is a 2-point home favorite. I always like to point out because I read about gambling that usually the home team gets 3 points. So with the Colts being a 2-point favorite, that means the Colts are
Yeah,
supposed
but
to
it's
lose by
yeah,
one, similar to the game last night. Which, by the way, the Raiders gave the Kansas City Chiefs that game. By the way, you were winning that game going away, and you lost. That's
yeah,
it's unfortunate to give away like 17-point lead too. It was pretty bad. Um,
yeah, yeah. And the fan, the last like the 2 point conversion for the win. I like those calls.
yeah,
I usually like, like you don't play for the tie, and especially against Patrick Mahomes.
right,
You know that you give him the ball in overtime first, and it's basically over. Like
right.
you have no chance.
I mean,
So
he's
I
definitely
like the
going to score a
call.
touchdown, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah, he's definitely like you just know he's going to do it.
yeah,
So you don't want to play with that, and you say, okay, if you feel confident in your team and you feel confident in your offense, you're like, okay, we'll just go for two. They didn't get it. They are now like, what are they, like 1-4,
hmm,
which sucks for McDaniels, Snake. But yeah, and especially Devante Adams, he pushed a photographer or a
yeah,
video man, and
yeah,
he's most likely like he's probably getting suspended. Like I don't know how much time he can probably get suspended. Like this is not something that we have a precedent on. It's not something that's quite common in the NFL.
yeah,
But he's most likely like he should get suspended for that. It was just not a good look, and it was
yeah,
like in front of everyone. Sunday Night Football, your superstar goes out and shoves the cameraman to the ground. He's most
yeah.
likely getting suspended.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, things not looking good in Vegas right now.
Right. Speaking of not looking good, Ashton Dulin went to IR today, and they're expecting him to return actually. So I did see that it wasn't necessarily IR for the year; it was IR
Nah,
expected
yeah,
to return. So, speaking of problems at wide receiver, here I was just saying like guys that you really want on the field, and I don't even know that that includes Paris Campbell are Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. But other than that, your good weapons look like your tight end group, and that's good for your run game. Got to get your running back healthy, right? So
yeah.
Colts are
Hopefully, JT. Yeah,
certainly in a position that they could improve here. This win means a lot. Again, when you don't win early in your season, games become must win sooner, it
yeah.
feels.
That's extra pressure, like extra pressure added for no reason at all.
Yeah. And maybe some people are just motivated that way, and maybe that's how these guys are motivated. And it certainly has felt that way, that, they play better with their back against the wall.
Yeah,
Um,
it seemed that way. Yeah, last season.
it's like playing the game on hard mode. You know what I mean? It's like you start the game in Hall of Fame mode and then let yourself get down like 17 points and then turn it on easy mode and be like, oh,
Yeah,
I guess we'll just come back from that double digit, you know. That's kind of what it feels like. They coach don't start playing until they, and that's what I've noticed that too. It's like a break in the ice, right? Like everybody's doing their job. We're blocking and tackling, we're punting and kicking, and then all of a sudden there's a turnover, and the game goes haywire. Um,
yeah,
and it feels like, and that's one of the things I want to make sure we get out with our podcast is I know that the numbers don't look good. And I know that the only real thing I can point at is completion percentage because there's a whole lot of other things that quarterbacks got to do that impact your overall performance. But I think as a baseline, you can look at team record and quarterback completion percentage and say pretty clearly, and I get it, correlation is not causation, all that, but clearly to
yeah,
me, there is a difference between the 10th rated completion percentage, which is like about 64%, and that team's 2-2-1. And then this team is
yeah, and
one and
yeah,
four,
yeah,
and they're like 20th in the league with a 62% completion percentage. And while the difference is less than 2%, look at the record difference. Like there is a big difference 1-4 and 2-2-1 could be 4-4-1. I'd argue. Like you take the Jacksonville loss on the chin, right, and say, look, we just lost that game, right? But these other contests could definitely have won. We could definitely played even better, even in games you won, right? So the Colts could definitely be 4-1, with nothing but terrible offensive line play that has to be fixed. And you expect with a roster move and a whole bunch of time off, they've got to figure that out.
Yeah.
And it seems very Colt-esque to sort of figure it out, maybe a little too late. Um, the hope, of course, is it's not too late. You get this win, you're 3-2-1, you have a division win now, and then you've got another one back to back. So you got to go what at
Yeah.
Houston, right?
No, I believe it's
At
like against the
Tennessee.
Jaguars right now at home. Then
Jaguars at
it's
home, and
against the,
then
yeah, then it's Washington away, I believe, like, or
no,
Washington at
no, 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 no,
home.
at the Titans. So it's home against the
And
Jags, and
yeah,
then
and
at
then
the
it's
Titans. So yeah, these are two division games back to back that you kind of got to win, but you come out of that two. I think you come out 2-2, 1-1 in your division,
yeah,
and 4-2-1 overall. Uh, is desirable, not because it's good for us and what our expectations were, but it's good given what's going on in the rest of the league.
yeah,
Because like I've already kind of said, I'm agreeing with Tom Brady. There's a lot of bad football being played. There's a lot of quarterbacks not being protected and getting injured. And it's not just the Colts, so it's not like this problem is unique that the Colts have had. And I think if you really, all things considered, to be like right around 500 is, you know what?
it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah, because it could
Yeah,
certainly
we
be
can
a
work
lot
with that.
worse. We can work with this. It's not, again, it's like we said, I think you and I have kind of narrowed it down, and that this problem is a prior problem, and that if we can just figure out this person and remove that person from our offensive line, we'd probably be all right. There's got to be someone else that can do the job. There has to be someone else that can do the job.
Yeah,
Because,
there
like I
has
said,
to be
he
at least a
seemed
little job.
shocked that they were making an inside move on him. And it happens so frequently that you're like, wait a minute, how is he still shocked that they're trying to cross your face? Like, clearly not, you're a long, tall human. I'm not going to try to go around you on the outside. I'll never get there. Right. But if I try
Yeah,
to cross your face and go inside, I can make the play on the run plays, right? And it's another effective form of pass rushing. So, like I said, it's shocking to me when you go back and watch the film. There's a couple spots where Pryor's like, "Oh, wait, what?" Like, and you're like, "What?
yeah,
No, like that's not okay. You're not allowed to be surprised anymore. Like, you're supposed to like see this shit coming." And I get it. Everybody's playing out of position, but I don't know. That was one of the things the Colts have harped on is about guys being willing to play multiple positions. So from my
yeah,
perspective, you want your wide receivers to run every route at every spot. You know, you're motioning backs out of the backfield in the flat. You're using tight ends all over the fucking place. So it's like everybody else is doing multiple jobs and pretty much above board. And I get it. There are some plays where they're
yeah,
well covered, and that's why the modern NFL quarterback needs to be mobile. So obviously you're going to roll with Matt Ryan, because first of all, he's actually been very effective at bringing the Colts back when they're not in games and making them games.
yeah,
And he's already done that this year. And he's kind of earned, I think he's earned my respect. Like he's actually not been very well protected, and he's done admirably
yeah. Not at
given
all. Yeah,
given a lack of protection. And I think that familiarity with the other players, it's only a matter of time before that offense starts clicking. Um, and when that happens, we'll have that game that you were talking about, where
yeah.
everything
That
everything
that
is being
Mark
played at a high
William or
level. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. It
Absolutely
seems like
believe it.
yeah,
Now, I'm not gonna sit here and say Colts are gonna win their division, Colts are gonna make the playoffs, none of that stuff. No, I'm saying like they got 10 days to get it right. We kind of know this guy and the man for the job, and that if you can right the ship on the offensive line and get that offense productive, you can play with just about anybody. Because that defense, I think you said that, by the way, in our chat. Like this has been like a 3-week period from this defense that's like
yeah. They've been
unseen
dominant. Yeah,
before. So yeah, I think
yeah,
there enough there to be hopeful about. because I do agree with you. I feel like their defense has been really good the
Yeah,
last
really
few
good.
weeks and have given the offense every bit of a chance to win the game. And I get it, they're 2-1 in the last three, Jared. Yeah, but no, but they got enough out of their defense that they could have won all three of those games, and that's a big
Yeah,
ask in any team environment, to ask a unit to win you the game. Um, is something you need a guy like Darius Leonard to come back so you can do
yeah,
ultimately, right? Because that's one of the things that the Colts are missing out on, are points created by the defense. Like turnovers is one
yeah.
thing,
They have, yeah,
but they're not scoring points. And a guy like Darius Leonard to help engineer stuff like that. So that's what I'm looking forward to is Shaq coming
yeah.
back
How much better?
healthy,
Yeah,
and
how
what
much better
impact
can
he
he make this
has.
defense?
Yeah, and ultimately he'll look to turn the ball over, and that's the thing. We'll look back on that and say, look, that in his first 5 games he had like 7 turnovers. Like, see, Shaq's the man. So you just got to get him all healthy. And like I said, what a perfect time, especially after again, it's got to call it a gift win. You got to call them what they are when they are,
Yeah,
right?
call it what it is.
Call it what it is. I wouldn't at all say that I think those quarterbacks are washed. I just don't think they're ready for a tough game and Mile High, and
Yeah,
it just has an effect on your body. So I get it. It wasn't sexy TV, but it looked like a defensive masterpiece to me. You know what I mean? It
yeah, it
was
was.
my
Yeah,
wife said, what was the score or something? I said, oh, it's tied. It's like 6-6. They've just been a field goal fest, and she's like, oh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, like a grinder.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, that's a good place to drop it off. This has been episode 38 of the Coltist.
yeah. The
Uh,
Dominic Rhodes episode.
Dominic Rhodes episode. After a week 5, we got a long layover. This is sort of the halfway point between the games. The Colts will play. What is it? Sunday
Yeah,
at
Sunday afternoon,
home
Jacksonville.
at 1 o'clock against the Jacksonville Jaguars, looking to go 3-2-1 in the season.
Yeah, 3-2-1 winning record.
Have a great
Hopefully.
rest of your week. Stay safe out there. We'll see
Yeah,
you after
we'll
next
see you
week's
on
game.
Sunday.